UFC 221 is in the books. The UFC's very first stop in Perth, Australia. It's behind us, and now we have to talk about everything that we just saw. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. The gentleman on the other side of your screen, that's Danny Segura. We are here for your official UFC 221 post-fight show. Danny, we have to start, number one, look like a good crowd, just to sort of mention in general, I think. But we have to start, of course, with that main event. Yoel Romero is not the new interim middleweight champion, but it's not because he lost. He won. He just can't get it because he missed weight, as we discussed in the previous show. But he defeats Luke Rockhold. I want to get this right. At 128 of the third round, he seemingly has 6 or more wins that all come by way of knockout in that third round. And it brings up a point that I want to ask here, not merely about this fight in particular, but we all thought back in the day, remember when Chris Weidman fought Luke Rockhold? We thought these are the next two guys at middleweight, right? This is the future. What a spectacular matchup. Yoel Romero has knocked both of them out. It is unbelievable how talented he is. What is your first reaction to this bout?
I was super impressed by Yoel Romero, but we knew that if Yoel Romero was going to win the bout, it'd be something like that. It probably wouldn't be a decision. It'd be a knockout, and it'd be like that. It'd be, closing the gap, throwing a big shot, and just overwhelming Luke Rockhold with power, who tends to have issues fighting in close quarters. I don't know if it's his body, because he has a very long frame and he's just built to sort of fight in the outside, or maybe it's something more technical that he should probably go over. So I wasn't exactly surprised by the finish, but very impressed of how Yoel Romero fought, very composed, took his time. We know he has had cardio issues in the past, so he was a little more calm and sort of picked his spots when he was going to be more aggressive.
What occurred to me in this one is that Yoel Romero double jabbed and then overhand, and that's what stopped him. And if you go back and you watch the replay, Rockhold is trying to catch him with a check hook as he's coming in. And you can do that, I feel like, if you're really, really quick. And it's not that Rockhold is necessarily slow, but you're right. He gets in those close quarter situations, and I just don't feel like he necessarily makes the proper decisions about what to do in those spaces. And it cost him tonight. Let's talk about this. If he had won, he would have been the middleweight champion. This is a bit of a devastating loss for him, right? He loses, or he beats Chris Weidman, then he loses to Michael Bisping, takes time off, comes back and he does beat David Branch, and now loses to Yoel Romero. Now, Yoel Romero is 40, but Luke Rockhold's 33. So I'll ask this plainly. Is Luke Rockhold done as a title contender at middleweight?
Possibly. You can never say never, because the division right now is so thin that like a win will put you right back up. So this guy could very well challenge for a title in the future. But you bring up a good point, how he has issues fighting close quarters. It's kind of like a deer, a deer with the headlights. He sort of just kind of freezes a little bit when the fight gets too close. And that's an issue that's been plaguing him for a bit now. So I'm curious to see how he reinvents himself. I know he went to Florida. He switched camps out of AKA, although he says he hasn't really officially left, and that's his family. But yeah, this is a tough loss for him. Where does he go next? I mean, there's tons of matchups. Maybe Kelvin Gastelum, possibly a rematch with Chris Weidman. Who knows? But there's definitely room for him to get back to the top and eventually get himself into a title contention. And maybe even get himself a title shot. So I don't think it's completely devastating. I don't think he's done like other fighters where you're like, all right, he's never fighting for a title. But definitely that window gets a little smaller now that he's got that loss, and now he's facing close losses. Michael Bisping loss wasn't too long ago. Again, the David Branch win was a pretty solid one, but David Branch isn't exactly a top 5 guy, at least for now. So it definitely puts him in a rough spot, but I think he still has some fight left in him, and it could very well challenge for the title in the future.
So the other thing is, I thought there were moments where he was looking pretty good, especially when he started to rotate off the jab. So he would jab and then cut an angle, then jab again, then cut another angle and jab again, like GSP style. He had some decent stuff working, keeping the fight at range. You saw those teep kicks. There was a lot I liked about it, but he never really put it on Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero having classic Yoel Romero fight, right? Where you're just taking time off. By the way, what Yoel Romero's really good at is the parry. Have you noticed that? When he has good energy, he parries a lot of shots. Neither here nor there. But I thought Luke Rockhold was doing some good things and getting warmer towards the end of that second round. But those flurries from Yoel Romero, why do you think they gave Luke Rockhold so much trouble?
I'm not sure, but I feel like when fighters fight Yoel Romero, it's kind of like when other fighters in the bantamweight division face John Lineker, when they just kind of get shocked, I guess, of the overwhelming power and fail to make decisions. When this guy's coming at you. So it's very interesting, sort of his style, because we know it's coming, but people yet have a hard time avoiding it. So very very interesting style from Yoel Romero, but yeah, he just put it on him. And Luke Rockhold, at the beginning, he seemed to be doing well. That first round was really close. I saw a lot of people score for Luke Rockhold, but as soon as Yoel Romero started landing the big shots, it seemed Luke Rockhold wasn't really throwing to land anymore. It was just throwing to stay busy. He was just sort of throwing a kick out there and hitting the arms. The jab wasn't really there on him. It was just sort of to stay busy and kind of, I'm attacking, so you can attack because I'm attacking now. Sort of just to keep the fight busy and keep Romero thinking. But yeah, after Romero landed those big shots, Luke Rockhold never really got anything going after that.
It's a pity that Yoel Romero missed weight.
Yeah.
This is a guy who the story better than I do, but has left family in Cuba and has not been back to see them in many, many years. And the fact that he didn't make weight disqualified him from having a belt. But if that had been a moment tonight where he would have gotten one, that's a pretty significant moment in this guy's life that he's had to not endure exactly. I mean, this is a high moment. What I'm saying is he's been through a lot as a person in this world, as an athlete, and he's 40 years old. This is a high moment for him. It's just a pity he couldn't, commemorate it with a belt. But what do you say about Yoel Romero? 40 years old, out there knocking these guys out. He is an absolute athletic specimen. What do you think this means to him tonight? More than just a big win.
This is huge. This means I feel like a lot of his wins had a lot of asterisk on it. We go back to the Tim Kennedy fight that had an asterisk on it. The Chris Weidman, it was a fairly even fight, and some people claim that maybe he got lucky with that knee, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. But yeah, this is a guy that I feel like with this victory, it was a clean fight. No controversy here. He put it on Luke Rockhold, the former UFC champion, a guy who, as we talked about in the previous show, many considered him, one of the best middleweights, if not the best middleweight on the planet. So I think this solidifies Yoel Romero. Like, this was no fluke. He didn't get here by chance. It wasn't just tactics and little things here and there that perhaps helped him a little bit, but this guy's legit and he's making improvements each fight, even at 40 years old, and he's just getting better. His athletic abilities are still there and he doesn't seem to be slowing down at any point in time. And you mentioned Luke Rockhold is 33 years old, Romero's 40, but it seems like Yoel Romero's the younger fighter here, at least in MMA years. So I think this guy could very well go on to fight till 45 and still be very competitive, or at least 2 or 3 more years at being on top. He doesn't seem to be slowing down at all.
And this likely sets up a rematch with Robert Whittaker. A great first fight. I cannot wait to see the second one. A full camp for both of these guys when they're both healthy. Knock on wood. Should be fantastic down the road. That takes us to the co-main event. Curtis Blaydes defeating Mark Hunt. I want to get these scores right. 30-26, 30-26, 29-27. I thought going into the third that it was probably one round apiece, but that does not appear to be the case, at least according to 2 judges. And then, boy, he really hammered him, Curtis Blaydes did in that third round. But let's start with the first. That fight looked like it was in trouble for Curtis Blaydes. He was getting tuned up, but he made a big adjustment. What is your big takeaway from Curtis Blaydes' performance here tonight?
I underestimated Curtis Blaydes. I'll be obviously the first one to admit it. I thought he was going to have a lot of issues with wrestling Mark Hunt just because of the size. I never really thought of Curtis Blaydes as this huge imposing heavyweight. And he actually looked a little bigger this fight around. He looked, more like an athlete. And he just proved that his wrestling's legit. Taking Mark Hunt is not easy. And holding him down while still being active with ground and pound. And this is a seasoned veteran. And not only that, but he also proved he has a great chin. I mean, how many people can take that shot from Mark Hunt? He took multiple shots and was still firing. He was still on his feet. He wasn't gun shy or anything like that. And he stuck by his game plan and did amazing. I think, we saw a lot of growth here. We saw a fighter that's a lot more mature and a fighter that is now game and a player in the heavyweight division. Now you can start throwing him, against big name fighters, the Stefan Struves of the world, the Andre Arlovskis, those guys, to sort of build them up, get some experience under his belt, and get him in the top 10.
I'd say you can give him
Top
guys
five.
higher than that. I mean, what really impressed me was, as you mentioned, the wrestling. the ability to make that adjustment. And at first, it looked like he was just going for positional control and not a lot of ground and pound. He was able to get mount and side control and then not do a whole lot with it. But by that third round, man, he was opening up on him. And I was really impressed that, like, as Hunt stood up, the wrist control, the ability to take him back down with some were takedowns, some were just mat returns. There's a bit of difference between the two.
Yeah.
But you're right. He really showed maturity through this performance, physicality through this performance, technical proficiency through this performance. And I'll say this, Danny. I'll pitch this back to you. I know everybody likes Mark Hunt. I don't think this damages his stock exactly because it's still the same guy in terms of all the strengths are there. And we kind of already knew he had a bit of a wrestling weakness. He kind of already has for these many years. But the division needs younger guys to move up, right? This is good for the heavyweight division in the long run. I'm not saying Curtis Blaydes is the next big thing, but you want guys like that at 26 years old to push the older guys out.
Yeah, and not only to change the generation up a bit, but just to get something new in the division. I mean, we've already seen all those matchups. Werdum, Hunt, Kane, Werdum. All those guys have been fighting each other at the top for so many years now. It's just, at this point, it's just a bunch of rematches, really. So now you got a guy like Curtis Blaydes up in there, and it's all fresh matchups. There's all new fights, and he brings an interesting style. He brings something new to the table, a new name, new blood, and this just makes for new matchups that are appealing now. For a while, the heavyweight division was stagnant, was sort of stale. Francis Ngannou came in and brought a little bit of spice in there. Now Curtis Blaydes is doing the same thing. So this was a win for the UFC tonight. Again, Mark Hunt's stock, I don't think it dropped because he didn't get smoked. He didn't go out there and get knocked out. And he didn't get dominated on the feet, and man, Mark Hunt is slowing down. No, he looked great on the feet. He looked like, the fighter that he always is, and he got out wrestled like he has before in the past. I think it was more of a testament of how good Curtis Blaydes got as opposed to, I guess, how bad Mark Hunt is getting, which I don't think he is at all. I think he's still, the same high-level fighter.
Yeah, and look, credit to Curtis Blaydes going all the way to Perth and beating Mark Hunt on the ground in his home country, more or less. Not easy to do. Great, grown performance from him. So as you mentioned, Ngannou has broken through. Now he obviously hit a wall against Stipe, but has beaten some those older guys. Yeah. You've got Derek Lewis, who I think has another fight coming up at UFC Austin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Tipura, I believe.
Yep, and now you've got we'll see what Volkov can do against Werdum. And now you've got Blaydes, who just beat Mark Hunt. So some interesting opportunities here for some of these younger guys. And again, not like Volkov's a spring chicken, but Werdum is, I think, past 40 at this point. So
yeah,
it's good to see some of this divisional turnover. I think you're seeing, look, DC versus Stipe is a great fight, but part of the reason why it's happening, of course, is because you're not getting enough of those turnovers. Now, speaking of that, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because there's really not a whole lot to say, but another guy at heavyweight who had a big night tonight, a younger guy coming up and making a name for himself. Tai Tuivasa defeating Cyril Asker at 2:18 of the first round. Not a very competitive fight in retrospect, so I'll say this. It's a nice win for the hometown guy, right? Everyone loved seeing him there, and looks like the guy has a bit of personality. Drinking beer out of a shoe. That's hard to hate, Danny.
Yeah. If you go on Mark Hunt's Instagram, who he's a gem to follow on Instagram, he's always posting videos of Tuivasa dancing and just being silly and doing funny stuff. And even his post-fight interview was kind of refreshing. It wasn't any call-out or anything sort of mean or anything like that, how some fighters like to be. He was kind of funny, and he was himself. It was a very, very unique post-fight interview. So, yeah, it's nice getting not only contenders and guys that can fight, but also personalities to spice things up, especially, in that heavyweight division that needs new blood. And this guy's just 24 years old. I mean, I said it in the previous show, this guy's Mark Hunt 2.0. I think he really is. I mean, he's young. He's, doesn't have much wear on him. He's quick. He's got power. He can mix things up well. He's got a personality. He's got a pretty complete package here. And I think, he can become a player in the heavyweight division and, get in some big fights.
That takes us to Jake Matthews versus Li Jianliang. I don't want to say much about this because it's not the most significant fight in the world. How insane was that eye gouge? Number one, that Jake Matthews didn't even seem to care about it. And number two, that the referee did seem to see it and kind of move Lee's hand, but that Lee even did it and that there's going to be no real consequence for it. That to me, and I'm not exactly sure what the answer is because some of these situations, they vary rather significantly, fight to fight, event over event. But it is insane to me, Danny, completely insane that there'll be no consequences for this. You can just foul, you can kick a guy in the groin, you can gouge someone's eyes like the Mountain in Game of Thrones, and there's never. It's the most insane thing. Why does this? What would be the? Let me ask you this: what would be the appropriate solution, at least to what happened in this fight?
Well, that to me, we know that when fighters, are in stand up and they have the hand down, they get a eye poke like that, it's accidental and stuff like that. But this looked far from accidental. I mean, you were on point with that Mountain gift, just smashing the guy from Narcos. I forgot his name on the show Game of Thrones, but that was on point. He was just eye gouging him straight up, and Jake Matthews just wanted that guillotine so bad he just didn't care. That to me is a DQ. Forget about taking a point off. I mean, you can literally just leave a guy blind for the rest of his life, destroy his career, and just leave a guy, change his entire life just from that type of eye gouge. That to me is a DQ straight up. No point taken away. It was completely intentional, as seen. And, it's very dangerous. That to me is very dangerous. I can't believe, the ref let that fight go on.
And I think he even said, if he does it again, he'll take a point. What? He won't have eyes left to see you take a point from the other guy at that point. Yeah. Crazy. Very quickly, Tyson Pedro beating Safirbek Safarov via Kimura, 354 of the very first round. Fine win for Tyson Pedro. By the way, another nice post-fight speech. That was good to see. A young guy at light heavyweight. That's good to see. It's not what I wanted to bring up. How about, to me, the biggest star of the night outside of Yoel Romero? Israel Adesanya defeating Rob Wilkinson at 3:37 of the second round. Boy, the UFC could really, really benefit from young guys who can talk the talk, but can walk the walk as well. Israel Adesanya has great style, absolutely not near borderline flawless striking. And while I don't think his takedown defense is perfect, it's pretty good already. And if he can keep developing it, boy, they might have a star on their hands here at Israel Adesanya. Big night for him. Wouldn't you agree?
Huge. I mean, this guy reminded me of Conor McGregor, not exactly in, his style, but, in sort of the package that, he brings. Conor McGregor in his first fight, I believe it was against Marcus Brimage, his first fight in the UFC, he was already making, headlines, maybe not the biggest ones, but, people already in the MMA world were like, all right, who is this guy? Let me start following his career. Israel is one of those guys. I mean, he looks super sharp. He's undefeated. His striking looked on point, very accurate, very deadly, very composed guy. He's 28 years old, doesn't have that much experience. I mean, I believe he has 12 fights, but, as far as like being in the UFC and the bright lights, in the post-fight scrum, following the event, they asked him what was his experience in his UFC debut like, and he said, deja vu. I've seen this before. I mean, this is very much like Conor McGregor. This is a guy that can talk, has personality, has a little flair of his own. He's I believe he's Nigerian as well. Now you guys, the UFC has Francis Ngannou as well, so there's something there. And yeah, young guy, super skilled and can talk. This is a guy they should start pushing and could very well turn into a star.
I think they should be careful about the matchmaking. He needs tough tests, but not super tough tests, at least not yet. Although if he keeps,
I'm so glad you brought that up because
I saw people saying, "Oh, he should be fighting people in the top 10." Are you insane? Are you insane, people?
I saw someone tweet like, "Oh, he can beat anybody in the top 5 right now. Start matching him up. Get him up there." No. That's how you destroy contenders. That's how you can ruin somebody's fighting career just with one bad matchup. This is a guy. Why does the UFC or people have an issue just have him in there knocking out people? Get some wins under your belt. Rob Wilkinson is a good fighter. He's a solid wrestler. But again, if you put him against Yoel Romero, who's a superb wrestler, he's obviously going to have issues. We saw him getting taken down a few times by a guy who's, a decent wrestler. So, this guy obviously has a lot of work to do. He's still very raw, but his potential's there. So you want to, give him as much leeway, as much room as possible. Obviously, he's going to have to carry his own weight. You can't just be a star in the UFC and not have tough fights. But, give him some time. Let him fight, guys outside of the top 15 for a little bit. Then let him test the waters with a few veterans. But don't launch him in there with a top 5 immediately. I know the middleweight division right now is all the top contenders are coming off losses. But, if you're looking at the long run, save this guy, get him some knockout wins under his belt. And, in the future, those dividends will pay off.
Very quickly, anyone else from the card tonight stand out to you and impress you with their performance?
Yeah, there was a few fights. Jussier Formiga scored a beautiful finish. And that flyweight division, if that TJ Dillashaw Demetrius Johnson fight doesn't happen, I mean Jussier Formiga is right there. So I think maybe a win away, or maybe even now, maybe he can get a title shot. I don't know, but Jussier Formiga is a guy who's been around forever. I believe he deserves a title shot. Not only from his recent performances, but this guy was ranked #1 flyweight at one point. I mean, this guy's an OG. If even before the UFC had a flyweight division. So this is a guy who should be fighting in championship fights. What else? Ross Pearson picked up a win, finally snapped a 4-fight losing streak. Revitalized his career a little bit. Gave himself some room here. Now, his UFC job, I guess, is secure for now. We'll see how he does in the future. Who else stood out? Teco Quiñones picked up a win. I believe he's 4-0 now since losing in the Ultimate Fighter Latin America, and he's right there knocking on that top 15 door. So I'm curious to see who they match him up against with next.
And I'll say my standout performance of the night, I'll give it to Jimmy Smith. I thought Jimmy Smith and John Anik, they sounded like they'd been doing commentary together forever. Brilliant UFC debut for Jimmy Smith. I just can't believe Bellator let that guy walk.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like,
it was ridiculous.
What was he asking for that they couldn't pay? I don't know, but whatever it was, it seemed like a mistake to not do that, because
he killed it tonight.
He was great, and John Anik did a great job too. It just seemed like a really strong pairing.
That's a good duo. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a duo you can rely on in the future. So all around, not the greatest card on earth, not the one filled with the most stars. Had its moments where it dragged, but there were some bright spots as well. Yoel Romero, he's not a champion, but he has now defeated the two guys who have previously worn it, and Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold. Beating Luke Rockhold tonight, third round. Was it KO? Yes, KO.
Yeah.
Unbelievable job. Danny, you can be followed, of course, at Danny Segura TV. I'm at L Thomas News. Thank you guys so much for watching. I guess we'll have more coverage all week long. Stay tuned for the MMA Hour, my live chat, MMA Beat, everything else. Appreciate it, guys. Until next time, enjoy the fights.